So, the very famous Minuet in G of Johann Sebastian Bach is a minuet. What is a minuet? Well, like a waltz, it is a dance and it's in 3/4 time. But unlike a waltz, which typically has this sort of accompaniment, a minuet has a very different feel. It's a stately dance. It should be performed in a very stately and regal sort of manner. One thing to know about the music of Johann Sebastian Bach is that he typically didn't write much in the way of dynamics or articulation. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do those things on the modern piano. It just means that he left a lot of room open for the interpreter to shape the music in the way that he or she would like. So when I play this first melody, I don't see any dynamics, I don't see any crescendo, diminuendo, I don't see accents, staccato markings, anything like that. But I still need to do something with it so that it is interesting to listen to and musically effective. Let's take a quick look at the beginning of this piece. First, I have a little 2-measure phrase, and then an answer to that phrase, very similar, but it goes up higher, so it would make sense on the second phrase to make a crescendo. Let's talk about the articulation. In order to create a sense of 1, 2, 3, on the measure that only has quarter notes here, measure 2, da, dum, bum, I would probably connect the first two and play beat 3 staccato. In contrast to romantic music, where we have a tendency to connect everything and play very long legato lines, Baroque music is generally played with more articulation, more space in between the notes. And you'll notice that as I recorded this piece, there are many places where I make little breaks in between the notes. For example, here. Now, there isn't necessarily a right or a wrong, but you want to think about playing it with a bit more space in between the notes. A bit more space, a bit more articulation than you would use if you were, say, playing Chopin. Let's talk about these ornaments. Ornaments are these little things like you see in measure 3 here. That little sign there just means that I play CBC very quickly. The main note, the note below it, and going back to the main note. That's what we call a mordent. If you find them very, very difficult to play in tempo, go ahead and leave them out. It's not a crucial thing for this piece. Many times you hear this piece played without the ornaments. Don't stress out about it too much, but if you do play them, just keep in mind that you want to stay as much as possible in tempo. You don't want to take a lot of time because you'll interrupt the 1, 2, 3 of the music. So we need 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I don't want to interrupt that counting. Work on it. I use the fingering 3, 2, 1, and that allows me to play that very quickly. Something to think about. Consider the phrasing here, even though you don't have any dynamics. In the second half of the piece, another great example, we have a phrase which obviously starts high and step by step gets lower. So don't just play through all those notes as if nothing is going on. The composer is making a certain musical gesture here. We want to reflect that. Start a little louder and go down by step. Now crescendo, and so forth. This piece can often be challenging for beginners because of the independence of the hands. As is typical with Baroque music, we have very independent melodies. What the right hand is doing and what the left hand is doing are quite different from each other. And from a perspective of coordination, that can be difficult. I would encourage you to take this and divide it up into maybe 2-measure segments or 4-measure segments and just repeat it several times to really get the coordination in your fingers, like this. I do the same thing again and again. And once I've got those 2 measures down, I go on to the next 2 measures, do the same thing, and then I start to string them together into larger units. That's a really good way of practicing these pieces, which present a sort of coordination challenge for both hands together. Of course, you can also try the piece with each hand by itself. That's a great preliminary step. Once you've got that down, move on to putting both hands together. I hope you enjoy this piece. It's a lovely work and a lot of fun to play. Happy practicing, and I'll see you again in the next lesson.